The Pittsburgh Penguins may be one of the more schizophrenic teams in the NHL this year. 1 minute they're red hot, 1 minute they're ice cold, 1 minute Sidney Crosby is in, 1 minute he's out. Hunter Hodies of Locked On Penguins is here to talk about the season and what to expect at the trade deadline next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. And Hunter, it's been a roller coaster ride for this Penguins team. 1 minute they look great, 1 minute they look inept, and often they're somewhere in the middle. The last couple of games, no Sidney Crosby. Talk to me about his status, his health, and what's going on with Sid.
Yeah, so it appeared that Crosby injured his shoulder/arm area in that game against the Devils. He was really favoring it coming off the ice. He was able to return during the third period, also play in overtime. You could tell it was hampering him a bit, but still wasn't enough to keep him out of the game. He really wanted to finish off that game and try to help the Penguins win that one. They ended up losing in the shootout, which has been the case all season. This team is the worst shootout team in the league. It doesn't matter if anything happens. Like, they are just that bad in shootouts. But then misses practice. Sullivan says, yeah, he's dealing with an upper body injury. He then comes out, skates the next day. He practices a little bit, but then goes off to skate on his own. Next day, skates a little bit more. And then heading into that game against Flyers, he did even more during that early portion of the day, but still didn't play. So he sat out these last two games. And fans understand that Sid is trying to protect himself for the Four Nations face-off. And I know there's some fans out there who don't really care about the Four Nations face-off. I get it. It's kind of an advertisement for the NHL. I see it as like an appetizer for next year with the Olympics. But Sidney Crosby is someone who very much cares about this. He takes being the captain of Team Canada very seriously. He hasn't done it on a stage this big in almost a decade at this point. So he wants to go out there and play and try to win this event for Canada before playing in the Olympics, because these next two things, Gil, are probably two of the last things he'll do as a member of Team Canada, because after that with the Olympics, after 26, you have 2030 is the next Olympics, and I don't think he's probably going to be playing at that point. Maybe he plays the World Cup of Hockey in 2028, but still, this is probably the last time he's going to be the captain of Team Canada at this and at the next Olympics. So he wants to go out with a bang on this. I totally get why he's protecting himself, but the fact that he's already skating, doing enough stick work, I think he's going to be fine for the Four Nations face-off. I think he's going to play at some point during the event. If it's the first game, we'll have to see. But I still think he's going to play the majority of this event, and he'll be back for the Penguins after the break.
And obviously, for the Penguins, that's the most important thing, that he's back after the break.
Absolutely, yeah. I really want him to hit that point-per-game record this year. That's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to this year, because obviously they're not going to make the playoffs this year. They might get a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft, depending on where they finish. But in terms of, success for this year, I just want to see him hit that point-per-game record. Like, that's the biggest thing for me. That's what he's chasing down. I know he wants to try and get this team back to the playoffs this year, but right now, just don't think that's in the cards. But I still think he is going to be fully ready by the time the NHL comes back from this break, as will Evgeny Malkin and as will Brian Rust.
Tristan Jarry, he's been let go. He's been sent down. He's back. Talk to me about where he's at and where the goaltending is at, because goals against remain the biggest problem for this Penguins team.
Well, Gil, I wouldn't say he's back. I feel like this right now is more of a paper move, because Joel Blomqvist and some of the other AHL players that were up during this week, Wilkes-Barre just had their AHL break. So they're still playing AHL games. They're being sent down to get more games in during this 2-week break. So Jarry really is not going to get any game action by being up with the Penguins. I would actually expect Jarry to be sent down after this 2-week break to get more games in Wilkes-Barre, and then they'll bring Blomqvist back up to back up Nedeljkovic. I wanted to see more of Blomqvist during this little stretch here, but it just so happened that Alex Nedeljkovic really went on a heater before the break here. Gil, in 7 of his 8 starts, he was .905 or better. In 6 of those starts, he was .926 or better, save percentage-wise. Like, this is the best stretch of play I've seen him play in a really long time. He's definitely boosting his trade value if the Penguins want to go down that road. Obviously, I know they'd rather deal Jari compared to Nedeljkovic, but Ned is still playing fairly well these last few weeks. It's a nice change of pace after the way he started the first half of the season where he couldn't make a save at all, but the same thing was going for Jari. So I really don't read too much into it. I know a lot of fans are freaking out, but I expect Jari to go back down after this break and for Blomqvist to come back up. We'll have to see how many starts he gets, but Ned, he's playing very well right now.
And would he have to clear waivers again if they send him back down?
No, he can just be sent back down. He went through waivers. He'll be sent back down. It won't be a problem.
Got it. So you said that it looks unlikely that the Penguins make the playoffs this year. They're not that far out, although there are a lot of teams in the hunt. What do you expect this team to do at the trade deadline?
Well, it's going to be more of the same. You just saw them trade Marcus Pettersson, Andrew O'Connor to the Vancouver Canucks. I felt like they got a very nice package in return for those two players. Danton Heinen, he's been fine. He missed a beautiful chance. I don't know. I just almost said glorified, but a beautiful chance against the Flyers on Saturday. Looked to the heavens after he basically missed a wide open net. Couldn't believe that. Vinny Desharnais, he's playing totally fine. I know he wasn't having a good year in Vancouver. His underlying numbers weren't good. Wasn't passing the eye test. So far, he's been totally fine. He's clearing the front of the net pretty well. He's moving the puck out of his own zone pretty well, making the right timed pinches. I think he's been totally fine in a bottom pairing role. They're going to keep playing him and see what he can do in that role. The big thing, though, is the first round pick, because I think they might flip that for immediate help and try and go get a younger player that can help not just now, but well into the future. But as for the plan, Gil, Matt Grzelcyk, I would expect him traded. Anthony Beauvillier, former Islander, of course, I would expect him to get dealt. He's had a fine bounce back this year. If you can get a mid-round pick for him, I'll be totally fine with that. They'll listen on someone like Rickard Rakell. I'm sure there's a lot of teams interested in him, and rightfully so. 25 goals this season. His bounce back has been so fun to watch, but I only trade him if you really get a massive haul. And I'm talking a first and a prospect, first and a player, something like that. But it has to start with a first round pick. If you want to trade him, you need to sell extremely high. Now, granted, I'm not sure the Penguins are going to trade him because I'm not sure they're going to get that offer. And you have to consider, if they do trade him, I think Sidney Crosby is going to be fairly upset because he and Rakell have really good chemistry this year. You got to give Crosby a couple of good line mates. He obviously has Brian Rose, who's having a great year, but Rakell is having an even better year. And that'll be 2 seasons in a row of, the front office taking away Sidney Crosby's best winger because they traded Jake Guentzel last year. So they'll listen on that. Michael Bunting, they'll listen on him. Erik Karlsson, that's more of a summer move if they decide to go down that path. But you're going to still see more players be sold off. Grzelcyk, Beauvillier, maybe they'll listen on someone like Matt Nieto, who's bottom 6 forward. Nolan Chari, same thing. We'll just have to see. But I would expect more trades.
And what would they be looking for in return? I mean, scoring depth is obviously an issue.
Right. I mean, I think with this, since they're building toward the future, they want younger players first. But if they can't get that, I mean, you're not going to get a younger player for someone like Beauvillier or Grzelcyk. It's probably going to be like a mid-round draft pick or something. So they'll probably going to have to stick with that. But if they decide to make a bigger move, like I said, Rakell, you're looking at a first plus a younger player, something along those lines. So I think in their order of priorities, it's younger players, draft picks, and then, some veteran players coming back that can at least eat some minutes every night. At least that's, I think, their order of preference. But they're going to be busy around the deadline, and I would expect a very active summer as well.
Yeah, and talking about that summer, I mean, if assuming Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin are back next year, and by all, we all expect that to be the case, what are they looking to do? Because obviously they want to get another playoff opportunity for these guys, but how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, it's all about getting younger. Like, they're trying to really turn over this roster and bring in more younger players that can really try and usher in this new generation of Penguins hockey. Like, they're basically rebuilding the team, but with the core players still on it. When I talk core players, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, if they want to trade Karlsson, I think this is the summer to do it, especially with the salary cap going up. But again, they're rebuilding the team while keeping the big three on the team. Because again, the only way those three leave is if they go to management or ownership and be like, okay, we're out of here. Like we don't want to be here. We're requesting trades. That's the only way they leave. They have not done that yet, and I don't expect them to do that. So for as long as that's the case, they're going to remain here while they try and flip the other portions of the roster to younger players. So, does that mean with how many draft picks they've amassed, are they going to offer sheet up an RFA this offseason? I can 100% see that. Are they going to, move up some of these draft picks for some of these players that could be available? I can 100% see that. Again, they got that extra first round pick that's top 13 protected. I think they're going to flip that pick, and they're going to try to go get a younger player who can be here not just for a couple years, but for the long haul. Like that's the type of player that Kyle Dubas really wants to go after to try and improve this team going forward.
All right, Hunter, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow the Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, all that stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies, and you can follow my co-host Patrick Damp on all social media platforms at Sin and Fouette. We'll have another episode for you all on Monday, breaking down these two games, hopefully with Jesse Marshall of The Athletic for Marshall Monday.
All right, thanks, Hunter.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts the post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly where Indeed Sponsored Jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need.